Hello, welcome to WD18, the Watford fan channel. Welcome to another video, the first one in 3 weeks. And the first one back is a big one. It's Rob Edwards being sacked by Watford Football Club, relieved of his duties just yesterday, midway through this international break. It felt at some point that there might be some news at the start anyway, but it kind of kept going. And ultimately, Rob Edwards was relieved of his duties just yesterday. And Slaven Bilić, 20 minutes later, is officially confirmed as Watford head coach. But it was clear that I think that one had been in the pipeline and they were waiting for that to go through before sacking Rob Edwards. We're going to get the take of Sam Ucko, as always, on what's been happening over the last few days and the reaction, as we've seen from Watford fans, and this changing and swaying consensus towards the ownership model of Watford Football Club. But as always, before we do get into it, please let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to WD18 as usual. We're going to be back with the consistent uploads from here on in, so do make sure you're subscribed, and we'd always like to hear what you have to say about the recent ongoings of Watford Football Club. There is always something going on, Sam. And first off, mate, how are you getting on? It's been a busy one. You've been on a couple of shows. You've been writing articles. This man's doing a lot at the minute. He's got everything in the locker. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. It's very busy whenever Watford sack a manager. It always sort of all these opportunities coming up, and you're sort of trying to grab them and trying to have put your say across as a Watford fan to the general media, because I think so much of the time, I think we're sort of misrepresented. I think less so this time, actually. I think a lot of journalists have got it spot on, and it's very difficult to sort of support the ownership this time round. But yeah, it was sort of really random how it was going on. I was watching a lecture. Now moved back into uni, and my phone's going off, and I just have a look at it, and I've got a couple of people going, "You need to check Twitter." Have a look, and Rob Edwards is gone. And I was just, oh my word, I don't really know what sort of went through me at that point, because there were so many different sorts of emotions that I think a lot of Watford fans can relate to. Anger, frustration. And among all of that, it's gone under the radar that Slaven Bilić is probably a good appointment as well. But, you know, it's all talk on the ownership now, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll get really into that today and get your thoughts on what's been happening. Sam, for me, just going back onto that point, I don't know whether this one felt a little bit different. I think just because of what had been said in the summer, the attempt to communicate more with supporters, the attempt to try and get the idea of what they wanted to do this season across, to build this new identity, this change of direction that's been mentioned by the hierarchy, and ultimately the quote from Scott Duxbury in that 5,000-word interview with Andrew French in the summer ahead of the season. And Scott Duxbury said, "We will be supporting Rob Edwards come hell or high water. We believe that he will deliver what we all want, a sustained and successful football club we can all be proud of." And it was 105 days since that quote. Rob Edwards was relieved of his duty. Sam, first off, why do you think the reaction has been so, I think there's a lot of emotion in a lot of Watford fans' opinions at the minute, and understandably so, because what's been promised hasn't been delivered. So what's your take on the reaction?
I think I can only really talk for myself, because obviously every single Watford fan's going to have slightly differing views on it. For me, I think we've seen pretty much since going back into the grounds after COVID, after last season's absolute shambles, that things were sort of teetering between the fan base and the ownership, particularly last season, a scapegoat was Scott Duxbury, and this season more so on Gino Pozzo. I think we've sort of, we've seen it started to get a little bit more heated pretty much every single week. But for me, I just feel like this summer, with the appointment of Rob Edwards and whatever was said by Scott Duxbury in that interview with Andrew French, I thought, do you know what? This is a really good opportunity to rebuild something and build something long-term at this football club. I was naive enough to buy into everything that was said and believe everything that was said by the board in various sorts of interviews. We got to speak to Rob Edwards. We were lucky enough to do so pretty much on the first day of his job, and I fully believed he was the right man to take us forward. And they've pretty much thrown all of that out of the window. And I think for me, I feel betrayed. And for that, I feel angry. I feel frustrated. And I'm fed up, to be honest with you, because it's not going to work, this hire and fire policy. As I said, I think Bilić could probably be a good appointment and could easily get us promoted. But whether that's sustainable long term, whether it's going to change the culture of the football club, it's not as long as Gino Pozzo's there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the word betrayed has been used quite a bit from Watford fans, and I completely understand that sentiment because, from my perspective, Sam, I think it's an unbelievable decision, really, and on a number of levels. I think it probably shows beyond doubt. I think there was part of me was like, part of me was like, okay, let's see if we can do this different direction that's been talked about. But for me, it shows beyond doubt that the hierarchy haven't learned from their previous mistakes on a recruitment level and the decisions they've made, I guess, of collective responsibility, that they aren't willing to take the blame for what's been happening on the pitch. And I guess of long-term thinking, because ultimately, if there was long-term thinking, then you wouldn't be making the change when they have, and you would be backing and sticking by that quote that Scott Duxbury said in the summer. Now, I feel, and what I will say before I just carry on, I do feel sorry for Scott in the sense that this is obviously a decision made above his head. And actually, the decision to sack Edwards, Sam, ultimately undermines Scott, doesn't it? And there's been talk of whether he would actually resign based on this, because I think if you're Scott Duxbury now, you're feeling pretty like naffed off that he's been undermined pretty publicly with the decision that's made here, because clearly this was a Gino Pozzo decision, right? And he ultimately gets the final say. And just before I throw that over to you, Sam, I think also what it shows is, and what we've seen over the Pozzo era, and yes, it's had its successes, is that the lack of patience in the short term is evident once again. Now we're 10 championship games in, 14 points in the table, 1 point off the playoffs. Yes, we've been underwhelming. Yes, the performances haven't been great. You felt after the Blackburn game that was. I think now looking back on it,
I called you, Jacob, after the Blackburn game, and I said I think that's it. To be honest with you, I think we saw Cisco was at those two games, the Blackburn game and the Sunderland game, and it appeared that there was nothing to read into. It's come out today by, I can't remember which journalist it was.
Sammy Mockball from the Daily Mail.
Yeah, that Cisco was in contention to take over. So the writing, I think, has been on the wall since that Blackburn game, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. So I just think in the context of everything, I just don't get it. Just going back to that, Sam, I mentioned about how Scott Duxbury's ultimately been publicly undermined here with the comments made in the summer, because clearly getting more access, well, Andrew speaking to Scott and getting more access with Scott Duxbury and actually throwing him questions that the fans want to hear, and he's answered them, which is absolutely fair play. Whether he, what's happened, he answered them at the time, and we all thought, okay, this is what we need. Ultimately, what's happened is those quotes have come to bite the hierarchy where they don't want to be bitten, and those comments and kind of put egg in Scott's face. So what do you make of that whole scenario and that situation?
I do agree. I feel really sorry for Scott Duxbury here. I think his hands are tied behind his back in many ways. I think Gino Pozzo ultimately makes the final call. And as we know now, it's becoming more and more apparent, he's running the football club on a day-to-day basis. And bear in mind, Gino Pozzo owns the club and he's not even on the board. He's still interfering with the day-to-day runnings of this football club. I feel sorry for Scott, but he's probably out of his depth as well. And we've known that for a couple of years now. I just think all of them are probably out of their depth at this point in the boardroom.
It feels like to me that it's almost a case of that Gino's almost run out of his tricks, really, because ultimately at one point we were ahead of the game in scouting. We were looking at different ways to progress as a football club, and he's gone to the point where he's gone, the only thing I can really do now, I don't really want to overhaul the squad, because realistically that is a reflection of the transfer window. If they were really committed to Rob Edwards, they would have backed him in the transfer window, which they didn't. And I think ultimately this decision shows that they weren't fully on board with the appointment in the first place. No, would you say that? Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. I think this was clearly a Scott Duxbury appointment. I think Gino Pozzo.
It was a PR appointment, Sam. Do you think it was an attempt to kind of go, look, the chaos of last season, everything that's happened, what we're going to do is we're going to get everyone on board. It might be a little bit of a gamble. It's not what we normally do, but at least then we can actually go, what we've done it. We've ticked the box that the fans want to see.
I don't think it is a PR move, because I think then they would have stuck with him. And I don't think, Gino Pozzo's not one to care what people think. We've seen that already. He'll go through 20 managers a season if it means he gets what he wants in terms of Watford's league position. So I don't think it was a PR move. I think Scott, who's probably more in touch with the fans, you see him more interacting with fans more than Gino does. We haven't heard from Gino Pozzo since 2012. I think probably said, look, we do need a change of direction here, which Gino Pozzo wasn't fully behind. It's evident that he wasn't fully behind it. I also think there was probably some sort of breakdown. There's rumours going around in the last week that Rob Edwards went to Gino Pozzo complaining about Cristiano Giuretta and his involvement in training every single day. Sort of for him watching over every single one of Rob's moves and all of the players' moves. Supposedly, Rob went and asked for Giuretta to be relieved of his duties, which he was. A week later, Giuretta's back and Rob Edwards is gone, which seems to me there's been a massive breakdown, and Gino's pretty much had to choose between Giuretta and Edwards, and he's chosen Giuretta.
Crazy, isn't it? Crazy.
Never a dull day supporting Watford, is there? I don't think there's a club in the world like it. As much, this is where it properly comes in, because sort of why I'm so frustrated, because I used to absolutely love this, because you used to be able to justify the sackings. We obviously had the whole Oscar Garcia, Billy McKinley situation. You could probably make arguments for why Kike, Walter Mazzari, Marco Silva were sacked. And it was fun, to be honest with you, watching the whole world against Watford and us defending ourselves and holding our own in the Premier League. But now I'm just fed up of it, to be honest with you, and something's got to change.
It's an interesting question. I'd like to hear what you guys think in the comments. And Mike Duran in the comment section, and let us know your thoughts as always in the live chat. If the promise of hell or high water wasn't said, would this sacking have been a surprise?
I don't think it was a surprise, even with the hell or high water quote, though. I think we always knew that, the saying is leopards don't change their spots. I think we always knew that Gino Pozzo, if things weren't going well, and just to clarify, things weren't going well, but they weren't going badly at all either. It's not like we were in a relegation scrap or anything like that. I think the team is probably where they're meant to be in terms of the quality of the squad, to be honest with you. I don't think we're good enough to get into the top six, but look, I don't think the club or Scott helped himself by saying that. It all came down to PR, him saying it. But it does make it more frustrating, the fact that he did say it.
Yeah, it does. It does. I don't know. I think the thing for me that really annoys me, obviously the comments are just not a great look at all, because ultimately it's a lie, really, to Watford supporters who have been following the football club. But just from my point of view, the frustration I have with it is it felt at the time the appointment of Edwards was the hierarchy listening to the fan base. We asked, and I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for quite a few fans here, asked for a young, up-and-coming, homegrown head coach that we could build an identity with a culture. And the bonus was he had the opportunity to continue to learn his trade. It was a step up from League Two for Forest Green Rovers all the way to the Championship. It was, I don't know about you, Sam, but it was one of the most excited I felt going into a season with a head coach before the transfer window, because you felt like, you know what, this is a great chance for someone to, look, when we spoke to him, you could tell that he got the football club. Like, he had done his research. Even when we spoke to him, if you want to have a look back at that video, you can tell we looked in his eyes for 30 minutes, and you could tell that he got what we were talking about. He got the football club. And then before the season, I went as far. I think we had this conversation, Sam, didn't we? Before the season, I personally would have said it would have been a success to keep him for a full season, and we failed at doing that. Now that's probably because the hierarchy don't feel that we would go up under Rob Edwards, but have we given him the opportunity? Have we backed him properly in the transfer market? Have we given him the control that he was? We don't know if he was promised, but the control that I think we expected him to be given. And then the Gino Pozzo quote, Sam, that I'm just going to read to everyone. So in the club statement, when they announced that Rob had left and Bilić had come in, and we'll get on to Bilić because ultimately this is a guy with a track record, and we will speak about him. But Gino Pozzo said, we felt Rob had enough time to show us the identity of his team. However, performances haven't reflected our hopes and ambitions.
Yeah, do you know what? It is difficult to argue with that. Not in terms of the sacking, but I don't think. Actually, as I said before, I think our league position probably reflects how good the team is, to be honest with you. I think performances haven't been good enough at all. There's no shying away from it. Even the games we've won, we haven't been good enough. And I think that we had this vision for Rob in terms of the football that we play, in terms of how he played at Forest Green. Now, I don't think he was helped. He wasn't given a right wing back. He wasn't, given a centre back as quickly as he perhaps should have done. And we're probably missing a central midfielder as well in there. So I don't think Rob was helped at all. And that's why I think this is all on the ownership, because yes, performances weren't great, but whose fault is that? I'd say, it is obviously, it's not 100% down to the board. Rob Edwards could have done more, particularly in terms of substitutions, I thought. But that primarily comes down to the squad that's been there now for 5-6 years, the same players making the same mistakes, the same with different managers. I'm not singling out any players. We all know who they are, particularly defensively, who are still there, who Rob Edwards is having to work with and try and get something out of when no other manager can, who are far more experienced, they're far more on their CVs than Rob. So why would Rob be able to get a job out, a tune out of them? This is where I think I feel sorry for Rob as well, because yes, performances haven't been good enough, but whose fault is that?
I think also the fact that, and I agree with you, Sam, on that point, and let us know what you think. I think ultimately the position that has kind of signified this mess really is the right back slot, right? There is no way a promotion pushing side, and honestly, you look at the teams that have done well under the Potsos over the years, would have played a left wing back, left back, at right back for the opening 5 games of the season or whatever it was, right? That is not acceptable for a team that is pushing for promotion. And then if I'd add on top of that, and this is not singling out Mario Gaspar, because ultimately he could come good, and Slaven Bilić could get the most out of Mario. So this is not a case of writing a player off. But I think it was clear when I think Rob, the phrase he used, that he wasn't a flyer, and he mentioned that he, compared to other players, he wasn't that type of player. And you could just tell immediately that he was not the type of player that he wanted. Now, that's not a surprise, because ultimately it's clear he had influence on some signings, the likes of Chowdhury, Davis and Hawes. Obviously, he wasn't helped by the fact Davis was ill. Hawes came in later in the window. That's not, that's unfortunate for Rob. But the fact of the matter is, one of the key positions we knew coming into this season was that he was going to play 3 at the back, and the 2 fullbacks were going to be absolutely crucial to the way he wanted to play. He had a left wing back, but unfortunately the left wing back was playing at right wing back, and we had another left wing back playing left wing back. And it was just, I think that probably says it all, Sam, right? The lack of recruitment in key areas, but it's almost feel like a broken record talking about it, because we've said it so many times.
We've been doing this. I've been on the channel now for about 4 years, and we've probably said this about 3 times a season, to be honest with you.
So should we, just to play devil's advocate, should we be surprised then with what's happening?
No, we shouldn't be. I think sort of, yes, that's why I say I was naive enough to believe that things would change. But in hindsight, and obviously hindsight's an amazing thing, you look at the squads and you think, how on earth was Rob ever going to succeed, to be honest with you? I think, of course, we got some amazingly talented players in there. We kept the likes of Ismail Assar, Joao Pedro, and even, the likes of Ken Sema, Keenan Davis. They can all do well in the Championship, but defensively, he was set up to fail. And that's why I don't think we can be surprised with what's happened.
It's an interesting one, just touch on Sarr and Pedro, because I personally think keeping... If I'm taking my mind into Gino Pozzo and Scott Duxbury, I think they're thinking, right, so we're 1 point off the playoffs after 10 league games. We've won 14 points. We've only won 3 games, 5 draws. I think they look at the squad and go, well, we've kept Sarr for you. And this is to Rob. We've kept Joao Pedro for you. And they would argue that 2 of the best players in the league, they have actually backed Rob Edwards. Now, I don't agree with that notion, because ultimately the sagas, I think, throughout the window, the ongoing disruption, which wasn't I guess that wasn't really anyone's fault, because we knew the speculation was going to be around those 2. But what would you say? I think we can agree that ultimately I think Rob should have done better with the players that they have. Yeah. So from your perspective, Sam, are they right?
I don't know.
More of a tune out of the players that we've got, because that's the way the Potsos have operated, right? And the model, it's been Kike come in with 14 new signings and get a tune out of them. Mazzari do the same. Javi obviously was probably the most successful in 66 games. So what would you say to the people, and I guess the board, who feel that Rob should have got a much better tune out of the players?
No, I get that. And I think at times, particularly the style of play was frustrating to watch. A lot of the time it was sort of goalkeeper to centre-back, 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 back to goalkeeper. I think so. I said then fans get frustrated. Goalkeeper goes long, goes back to the other goalkeeper. In that respect, yes, it should have been better. But as I said before, there's defenders defensively and in the midfield as well, who doesn't matter which manager it is. They've been at the club now for 4 or 5 managers. They're making repeatedly the same mistakes week in, week out. Rob Edwards was never going to get a tune out of them, considering far more experienced managers couldn't. So in that respect, I don't think it is a justification saying, well, we kept Sarr and Joao, because look at the other sides of the pitch. It's a mess back there still.
Very true. And makes a great point in the comment section. Need loser back. It would have been nice to see what Rob could have done with the team with no injuries and at least Christmas.
I think Rob was a bit unlucky in this respect as well. The fact that he didn't have Imran Loser in there. Jeremy Ngakia played half an hour and then got injured. You know, the whole transfer saga is going on in the background. Pedro looked like he was gone, then he was back. Saul looked like he was gone, then he was back. Obviously, Emmanuel Dennis played as well a couple of games. So I do feel sorry for him in that respect because it wouldn't have helped.
Interesting. Ryan says Elton said he was going to take a hands-on role at the club in the winter. Wonder how he feels about this news. I think it might be next year. He's thinking about when he's finished touring, getting involved with the football club. I would love to know what Elton's thinking right now. I mean, imagine we just did like a live stream with Elton exclusive. What do you think of Rob getting sacked? I mean, boy, he's like all of us, isn't he? Probably.
It's a kick in the teeth for him as well, because I was there that night when he said we need to get behind the manager. The team needs to show more passion, and we haven't seen that at all. And I think he'll be as frustrated as anyone. Look, there's going to be questions. I don't know who I'd want the new owner to be, if there was one, or whether I'd want Elton John fully back involved in the footballing side of the club, because football has evolved. But I mean, I've always said that in terms of the involvement I'd want Elton John to get the ethos back into the football club, Graham Taylor's values, and speak to a couple of your American friends and get some investment in there as well.
Yeah, I agree. Dan says, I'm not saying Gino shouldn't receive criticism, but he definitely deserves some respect to his name. Developed stadium and had one of our best spells in club's history in top flight. Now, Dan, that's a really interesting point that you've brought up. And I agree with you in the sense that I don't think what's happening on the pitch, and I guess off it, should wipe away work that's been done. From my perspective, anyway, I'll throw it over to Sam as well. I'm very much in the opinion of something needs to change in the way we're operating if we want the club to go in the direction that we want it to go in. Because at the minute, all I can see us doing, and Sam, I'd love to hear what you think, mate, but it's going to be yo-yoing between divisions and then an opportunity where I'd imagine the hierarchy probably go, look, we'll move it on to someone else. And obviously we don't know who that next person is, but it depends if we're happy with doing that, you know. And ultimately, it's not a given that we go up this season because, as we said, we don't think the squad is as good as I think outsiders are making it out to be. I think the name of Watford, who have been in the Premier League for 5 seasons in a row, people automatically expected us to go up. I said at the start of the season, I would have taken a top 10 finish. I know Edward staying for the season and an identity being built and going through this tough patch. And we had one tough patch and we're now, and I guess even a tough patch with 1 point outside the playoffs. So if that's a tough patch, then Jesus. But to get rid of a manager when we've clearly outlined what we wanted to do, we've gone completely against that. I think that's the bit that's frustrating for me. But Dan, I completely understand where you're coming from when you say that it doesn't wipe away the other things. Now, Sam, what do you make of Dan's comment in that respect?
I agree in that respect. I think for me, I'll always remember the Pozzo era fondly. They gave me some of the 7 best years, not just of football, but of my life as well. And I'll always look back at that FA Cup semi-final day, and that was what Watford Football Club is all about. But for me, in football, you can't stand still. Football evolves, football moves. And while the Pozzos used to probably be a step ahead of the game, they're now 3 steps behind everyone else. Now, I thought this summer would be the chance for them to change with the appointment of Rob Edwards, but they're not. They're standing still again, and they're not changing their ways. We're not sustainable like this. And for me, Gino Pozzo has to go for that. I would go as far as saying that I think it's probably time for Gino to go before he tarnishes his legacy anymore. Because, you know, again, as I say, I'm so grateful for what they've done for the football club. But and while they're here, we might keep on having a football club. If we want success and a long-term success for the football club, I think they probably have to go, to be honest with you, providing that whoever wants to buy the club is right.
Yeah, let us know what you think in the comment section about that. Are you very much in the Gino in or the Gino out camp? I got the impression on social media. Now, obviously, we have to take that with a pinch of salt in the sense that not every single supporter, not 20,000 people who go to Vicarage Road every week are on social media, but you definitely get an idea of the consensus. And I got the impression that a lot more people are swaying towards the Gino out camp. Now, I think there were a lot of people, Sam, in that middle bracket of Gino fix up, change your ways sort of camp.
I was in there.
And then what was Or was it this decision that moved?
It was this decision because, as I said, I was ready to be patient this season after what was said in the summer in the appointment of Rob Edwards. I was ready to be patient, but nothing's going to change, is it? And do you know what? Yes, Slaven Bilić might give us a better chance of getting promoted. Of course, there's still a very good chance that we could get promoted. However, that's not a culture at a football club, is it? Promoted, relegated, promoted, relegated. I want a club to be proud of, to really have an identity that, first of all stands on moral grounds, professional grounds, and generally, as a solid foundation for a football club. We don't have that anymore. It's upsetting because I was willing to give the Pozzos as much time as possible. I wanted to get behind them, but leopards don't change their spots. And Ian here makes a valid point, going, Gino in, the grass isn't always greener, meaning that we could have worse owners coming in. I would only want Gino to sell the club if the person coming in was going to be better.
And that's the thing, as HJ says, Gino, after what he did yesterday, needs to go, but what do we get in return? Look at Bolton, Birmingham, Charlton, Blackpool, etc. I think it's a really difficult one because I personally can't say a definitive statement like the Pozzos out or Duxbury out until I know what's on the other side. Personally, I think it's almost like going it's almost like going to something blind. Like I have no idea what ownership model we'd have instead. So I personally can't say that. But what I'm very much in the opinion of is change the way you're operating the football club, because at the minute.
But Jacob, do you genuinely believe they will change?
No. Well, no, because what I've seen so far, I think this was the opportunity to show a different direction and a fresh identity, and we haven't seen that after what was said in the summer. So I'm not convinced they'll change, but I'm also not on the fence of they've got to go, because I'm worried that will be given to someone who should be in charge of what football club. That's
granted. Hence, I think for me, it's always conditional. If I say Gino out, it's Gino out if someone is going to come in who would do a better job. And I think now it's probably the right time. I'll throw this one over to you, Jacob, then, and people can let us know in the comments. Do you think the Pozzos have tarnished their legacy at Watford?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a great question. Let us know what you think. I would probably say yes, in the sense that people normally remember the most recent bad things about someone, and that's just life sometimes. Like, you could be an absolute saint, but you could make a mistake, and that's ultimately what people remember you by. I would say, personally, to an extent, in the sense that I'd say this season has made me change the way I thought about them, because I've lost trust in the way they're operating the football club. But it doesn't tarnish what they built between the years of 2012 to maybe to the FA Cup final. For me, that was like, and I know I've spoken to loads of fans, as we all do with the channel and stuff. And I remember speaking to one fan, and they were saying, like, this is one of the best periods I've seen supporting Watford. And they've watched the 80s period under Graham Taylor. And that was obviously the pinnacle between, looking between about 78 and 86, right? That was like the prime time to be a Watford fan. And they said this was one of the best periods to be a Watford fan. But I think the last couple of years has definitely made people look differently at the ownership model and look differently at the way the club's being operated. In answer to your question, Sam, I've really waffled on here. It hasn't tarnished the years of 2019 to 2012, but certainly the last 3 years have maybe look at the ownership model differently.
No, that's fair enough. How different things would be if Roberto...
What about you?
If I was going to say how different things would be if Roberto Pereira chipped the ball over Edison in the FA Cup final. Who knows where we'd be now?
Probably would have lost 6-1.
True.
And great to see you, Naf, sorry. What a top bloke. His son as well is an absolute baller. Everyone remembers what you do wrong. They have done way more right than wrong. Gino in for now. Lou Orn says that's taking it to the extreme, though. Gino is a genuine more on his asset stripping. He turned the club into a financial crisis. Bassini is the extreme, but we're on the exact same path to that level. Hornet Shane, great to see you, mate. Make sure you follow his new Insta. Yes, they have. Sam, I'll throw it over to you while I find a few more comments. Have they tarnished their I guess legacy is the right.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you on here. I think, Jacob, that I think they gave me the best years of my life between 2012 and 2019, but then since then it's just gone so downhill, and it's almost like it's almost like we got a new owner in charge, because it's genuinely the last 4 or 5 years. I know the last promotion season, but we were behind closed doors, and the football wasn't even that good, if we're being completely honest with you. But it's just been an absolute mess now for the 4 or 5 years, and I'm almost trying to remember it sort of as almost as sort of 2 separate tenures, where I'm sort of remembering Pozzo's 2012 to 2019 versus the Pozzo's 2019 onwards, which hasn't been good.
Yeah, the downfall, blimey. I wonder if we hadn't got to the FA Cup final, if it would have been different. That is always those sort of questions I always think to myself.
I've always said whoever didn't get to the FA Cup final would have got Europe that season. So if we'd lost to Wolves in that semi-final, I think we would have come 7th. But I don't think it would have changed too much, because I still think the board would have got complacent, stood still, and only signed Craig Dawson and Danny Welbeck that transfer window.
Don't take away from Danny Welbeck, that overhead kick.
But he wasn't the right man, and I think again, we're gonna sit here for ages and talk about what's going right, what's going wrong. I think recruitment.
What I don't think is helpful though, Sam, is it's got to the point now where I think it's more than a 50-50 split in terms of the way people are viewing the ownership, but ultimately we're now at a point where it's fractured. The relationship between the fans is like it's going to take something special over a prolonged period of time, I think, to rebuild it again. Yeah, I personally don't think people, and I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone, but personally, I even think if we got promoted this season, people won't forget about what's happened.
No, it's papering over cracks, isn't it? I think if we go up, to be honest with you, I think because if we go up, we're going straight back down, and I'd be shocked. Jacob, if I had to say this to you now, Slaven Bilić will still be here this time next year. 90% you'd say no as well, because he seems like a man who's not going to take any rubbish as well. If he's not giving good plays, he will be banging down that door of Gino Pozzo, Scott Duxbury, and who knows whether that will cost him his job as well.
I guess the thing is though, Sam, he knows what to expect, right? I mean, what I will say is we've completely ruined any opportunity to build anything long term now, because there's no young, I guess, British head coach.
Yeah,
that's not to say you can't. We should be looking at everywhere, but I think if you're looking at like the type of manager Rob was wanting to be, I think we pretty much ruined that opportunity, because I think coaches will look at it and go, well, it might be a payoff, but ultimately I'll have a bad run and I won't get to see it through, right? But now we're kind of, you look at the recent appointments, and what I will say is they're starting to become very similar. The likes of the Ranieri, sort of Bilić, been around the block, knows how it works. Now, I think Bilić is a good manager for the level, and we'll get into that. But my point is, with the decision made with Edwards has basically halved, if not cut off so many opportunities to get other managers, in my opinion. Just going to the comment section, Dan says, 100% agree something needs to change. Just highlighting things could have been a lot worse, and we shouldn't forget the successes that they have had since they bought the club, which benefits us in the long term. I completely agree with you, Dan.
What is the long term though?
I mean, for example, having 4 stands.
But we'll have no money soon if it seemingly continues the way it's going, and who knows where we'll be going from there.
Yeah, I if I'm correct, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Dan's point was more in terms of like the NHS work and the community trust and the stands and the Graham Taylor statue, etc. I think he's more, but Sam, carry on, mate, because that was an interesting point.
No, I do definitely see what you mean, Dan. And I think again, I'll always say I'm always grateful for the Pozzos, but what's the point in having I don't know 4 stands in a stadium if we're not going to fill them if we're in League One? Because I'm saying I'm not saying we're more likely to get relegated, for example, but with the Pozzos, no one knows what's going to happen. Not filling up those 4 stands, not having the money to compete at a higher level, it's frustrating, and I think that's where I question what's benefiting us long term here.
So Simon Brown in the comment section says Gino only cares about getting promoted ASAP for financial reasons. He doesn't care about building an identity or team that could actually compete in the Prem. I think that's probably a fair comment, right, Sam? Because the decision that's been made, ultimately suggests that they weren't fully on board with the appointment in the first place of Edwards.
I think we should start comment of the day or something. I think if we did comment of the day, I think Simon would win it for this. I think he's absolutely sums it up perfectly here, because I think who's the manager that's more likely to get us promoted in the short term? I think anyone would say Slaven Bilić over Rob Edwards. That's Gino only caring about getting promoted ASAP. But who'd be the manager who'd probably build something longer term and build an identity? That would be Rob Edwards. So we're seeing where Gino's priorities lie here, and I think Simon sums it up perfectly.
I've got a really interesting take, and do you think Marco Silva removed any opportunity of? Do you think Marco Silva changed the way the Pozzos thought about the way they've run the club because of the way it happened and the way that you couldn't rely on a manager because they could just potentially leave to another club? Because the way Watford are, we're never going to be one of the biggest clubs in England. We're going to be in between the positions of maybe 15th in the Prem to 15th in the Champ. I don't know. Right. So mid-table in the Champ to mid-table in the Prem. And there's always an opportunity to go up a level. Do you think that Marco Silva saga has changed the way we approach and the Pozzos approach this football club?
It might have done. Certainly might have done, because I think with Silva, they were willing to give him time. I don't think they probably backed him in the transfer market. Who was a striker again that he wanted to bring in? Limani. Yeah, and we didn't bring him in. We brought in Andre Gray instead. Less said about that transfer, the better. But I think it could well have done change their mind, and I think certainly it probably hasn't helped Rob Edwards' case. But I think Silva was a very his case was an exception, because we see some other managers who are willing to stick around and wait for bigger jobs, bigger than Everton as well.
I guess it then goes back, right, Sam, to, we don't want to go through the history of Watford Football Club, but it does go back to the Javi decision. I mean, when you think about it, that was the appointment where we gave him the new contract, and you thought, right, here we go, let him build something, and we just kind of cut it at the first opportunity. And I think that's the frustrating thing for me, right? Because when Javi came in, obviously it was after Silva, and he did a really good job at stabilising it, then took us on another level. I mean, the best season I've seen supporting Watford. And then you're like, right, he's earned himself some time here. Regardless of what happens first 10 games of the season, he's earned himself, 5-6 games of the season, he's earned himself some time. But clearly, I think going back to that comment that Simon says, Gino wants a team, because he's a businessman. He wants a team that can compete in the Prem and that can keep him, financially successful. So, mate, it is really interesting when you actually dig deeper into it. And this is why, we try and have the discussions, and we try to get you guys involved, because everyone's got a different opinion on, I think, particularly at the moment. There's more people that agree with each other, but there's a kind of split in opinion on some things. Shano says, thanks for the memories, aimed at the hierarchy, I believe. We'll never forget how you saved us in 2012, but now it's time to go. Lou Warren says, can it genuinely get worse than this, though? The grass is 80% greener. And Dan replied, of course it can, Lou. Bankrupt relegation to League One, many other examples like Derby, etc. Yeah,
it's an interesting debate. And again, it's a lot of, like you said, it's difficult to commit to anything if we don't know what's on the other side. Because obviously there's so many, who knows, we could get taken over like Newcastle and be in the Champions League in the next 4 years, or we could get taken over by Bassini and be in League Two in 2 years' time. So lots of if, buts and maybes. I suppose we'll see. I mean, I just had a thought now as well. It wouldn't shock me if we play against Rob Edwards at some point this season as well, because
I think he'd be a great fit at Rotherham.
Yeah, I think he's the odds-on favourite for the Rotherham job.
Is he?
And I think he's something like third favourite for Cardiff as well.
Yeah.
And he's got those Welsh links as well, I think, in his family.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I do think we'll play against them at some point.
I wonder what reception he'll get.
I'd give him a good one. I don't think any Watford fan can remember him.
I'd give him a great reception, 100%.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I'll miss Richie Kyle's Scouse accent on the training ground from those training videos.
Those things with Rob's interviews, you actually wanted to listen to them.
I think, but that's the thing. I think the club, we're going to talk about PR again, but the club sort of knew in terms of the media team at the club. I think they sort of bought into what Rob was doing as well. We saw these sort of loads of behind the scenes training videos in the summer. We got that video of his team meeting, I think, out in Austria or something like that. Obviously, we had the interview ourselves and from the Ricker end in the Athletic. And I think that really did signal a change in direction, which makes it even more disappointing.
Yeah, I kind of feel, I don't know, it's really hard because you don't want to liken it to like getting like betrayed by a girlfriend or something, and then they're like leaving you just out of the blue. But it is genuinely like all the signs were there that this was supposed to be something that we all were on the same page about, but clearly some others weren't on the same page about. And it's just, I guess it's just processing that, but it will, you know, it will over time. Ojda, I hope I pronounced that right. Ojda says, success will make the change. We need to trust Bilić can fix it. We got the players to play his style. So if he succeeds, we might hope for change. Just before we get on to Bilić, and I know we've been going for a little while, so thank you to everyone who's watching at the minute. Please do leave a like on the video as always, and follow us on Twitter. I can actually add my here if you want to drop me a follow and see my waffling on a platform. Make sure you follow Sam as well, and at WD18 fans on Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to the channel. Richard Lee's, not Richard Lee, former goalkeeper, Richard Lee's poor recruitment of players and coaches, same mistakes over and over. We need fresh ideas. Oh God, it's interesting. Let us know what you think about Slaven Bilić. I still can't believe he's actually at Watford. It's one of those managers, right, Sam, where you kind of, you know, it's like a sort of bingo. You would have expected him to be here at some point. Ranieri was 100% on that list. Is there any other name you would think they will definitely manage Watford at some point?
It's difficult thinking on the spot now, to be honest with you. I've always thought Gattuso was always a name that's always sort of been in and around.
Or Cannavaro.
Cannavaro as well. Yeah, Cannavaro, definitely, I could see. I still think John Eustace would probably manage us at some point as well.
Yeah.
I know Birmingham was just his first job. It's difficult, but there are certainly names when you sort of look at them and go, Claude Puel's one as well.
Oh, that's the winning answer.
Claude Puel's the one, isn't it?
100% the winning. Claude Puel will be a Watford manager at some point. It's just going to happen. And imagine if Edwards comes back like the second time round under a new ownership. Right. Reaction to Bilić being appointed. I mean, clearly he wasn't the reason Rob took training and then was sacked was because they were trying to get the next man through the door. And that Slaven Bilić, who signed an 18th-month contract at Vicarage Road. Some people are saying it's going to be 1.8 months, but we'll have to wait and see how long it's going to be. Sam, look, what do you make of Bilić coming in? You're someone I know has been kind of quietly positive about him as a manager.
Yeah, I'm certainly pleased with the appointment. That's not to say I'm happy with the sacking of Rob, but I think it is a good appointment. In terms of who's got a better chance of getting us promoted in the here and now, it's Slaven Bilić for me. Speaking to a West Ham friend, a couple of West Ham friends, they all absolutely loved him. At West Ham, I think he was there when Dimitri Payet was there as well, and they had some of the best years that they've had in a while while he was at the club. So, look, it could be exciting times ahead. Did well at West Brom as well, and that's why I urge people. I just think we have to get behind the manager and the team. Come Stoke away, come Swansea at home, because whatever's happening off the pitch, these players still need to get promoted, and we need to get behind them and the manager.
So, interesting comments. Luan says, Bilić had a falling out with Scott Duxbury at West Ham and didn't like the way we treated Flores. I've seen those quotes about Flores. Label the decisions Gino makes as nonsense. That's a great start. Ian thinks Bilić generally stays anywhere about 12 months at most. Look, what I will say is I think Slaven Bilić is a good man, is a very good manager for the level. I think that's one thing for certain. I remember when he was at West Brom and took them up, you thought, God, he's better than the Championship in terms of his credibility and his track record. I mean, I just think his personality is pretty fiery, which is, different again. And that then takes, not to cart back onto the recruitment, Sam, but that kind of takes me to the place of he's almost like the complete opposite of Rob Edwards.
Yeah.
The signing with the managers we're appointing are just like complete.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It's the reverse of Ibić to Xisco, isn't it? It's almost like now we're going from the nice guy to the disciplinarian, if you know what I mean. Which is going completely contrasting styles. Look, time will tell whether it will be a good appointment and whether we will go up under him. I have a good feeling about it. But yeah, look, I don't know about his relationship with the board, but they must have, it's a win-win situation for him because If he does well, we go up, and he probably gets a nice bonus. If he doesn't do well, I don't think it does anyone particularly too much harm now if he gets sacked by Watford, because it's probably not a reflection on the manager. So I can see why he's probably still taking the job.
So one question, do you think with Bilić coming in, it gives us a better chance of promotion?
Yes, I would say that. But does it give us a better chance? Does it give us a better chance of building a long-term culture? Absolutely not.
So I guess, Sam, the question is, as a fan, what do you want now, right? Because have we got to the point where it's promotion at? Is it promotion at any cost?
I think if you're Gino Pozzo, it is. I mean, I said at the start of the season, I think we have to go up. We simply do, and I still stand by that. Which is why I'm not, why I'm happy with Slaven Bilić coming in. The reason why I'm frustrated about Rob Edwards going isn't necessarily the fact that Rob's going. It's more the fact that we were lied to, and the fact that what the board said they'd do is completely different to what they've done. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it probably does give us a better chance to get promoted this season.
Yeah.
Ultimately, because Bilić has a proven track record of compete. I mean, particularly in the Championship, he's got West Brom up before. I was thinking of managers that we could have brought in who have done that, and I think he probably would have been quite high on the list, to be fair, if he actually said what manager would you want who's got a team promoted before? So I think Gino's probably looked at him and gone. And I think I actually read, and I really urge anyone who's got the time to go and have a read of Adam Leventhal's article that he did today. And he was approached before Hodgson, and he didn't want to take over a sinking ship, was the kind of the line in the piece. And then ultimately, what was interesting was why we didn't go back in for him in the summer, because he was out of a job.
Yeah,
I think that I was surprised when I read that, Sam, because I thought, realistically, if he's available and you wanted him before, and we've dropped down a level, and he'd be willing to come, which he has proven to be.
Yeah.
Why would? But yeah.
No, definitely. It's quite interesting because within the 20 minutes yesterday between him going and the appointment as well, sort of me and Mate dropped sort of a short list. And we had 3 names in there who we thought it could realistically be. One of them was Slaven Bilić, who was the odds-on favourite. The other one was Xisco, been at the last few games. We know that when managers are at games, they often are appointed soon after. And the other one was Sam Allardyce. I thought there was a good chance that he'd get appointed as well. He's out of the job, and we saw that last season they quite like to go for the experienced English head coach in Roy Hodgson. So they could go with someone like Sam Allardyce. So out of those 3, Bilić is probably the best one, to be honest. And here's hoping he can do well.
Absolutely a better chance for promotion. Bilić knows what he's doing, and he will use Sarr and Pedro better than Edwards, says Odster. Kevin, Edwards had to go. Has Jacob's hairstyle?
I didn't think Jacob's hairstyle was that bad.
That's comment of the day. That's top draw. I saw an interesting point from someone above. Shano, Bilić has nothing to lose. Really interesting point in this, because ultimately Watford managers coming in know that. A good appointment, and West Brom fans adore him. Who knows how long he'll stay, though. Ant says he may do well, and I hope he does. But right now, without any games played, I'd have preferred Xisco back, seeing as he knows half the players.
Yeah, but I think the play he lost the dressing room.
Did someone just shout out what?
I don't really know what's going on downstairs.
Please tell me someone heard that in the comments. Someone must have heard someone shout out.
I think that probably.
It's killing me.
I think I think he lost the dressing room, though, Xisco, didn't he? He did it. I think it leads away summed that up. I don't think I would have been happy at all if it was Xisco coming back. It would have been a reaction of me going, "What?" Pretty much.
Incredible. That is honestly one of the best. I think I might be top 5 moments ever. Lou Orns, I think it's important to differentiate between Gino and the Pozzos. Gianpaolo would keep Rob, no doubt. They're known in Italy for giving managers too much time, bizarrely. That's a really, really interesting comment and one to keep in mind. Matt Slater, West Brom fan. Thanks so much for watching, Matt. Bilić will take you on a fun ride, gets the best out of Flair players, so expect to see Sarr and Pedro thrive. Got the best out of Pereira and Dingana. That's a really interesting comment. Thanks so much, Matt, for tuning in. Hopefully he can do that. Hornet Shane thinks promotion would be the worst thing for us. It would justify Rob's sacking in Gino's mind and would be terrible in the Prem, as we won't build a good enough side. I guess the question is, Sam, if we went up, do you reckon Bilić would want to stay? I know this is hypothetical, but Do you think he'd expect to leave anyway?
Yeah, I don't think anyone comes into the job now at Watford expecting to stay for too long. That whether we relieve him of his duties a bit like another Slav in Slavicia Kanovic when we do get promoted, we'll have to wait and see how performances are and whether the players get on with him. So, whether it's a weird one because I've always said if we can win the league, get the trophy, get the Premier League money, and stay in the Championship, I'd do it. I'd always do it because it's a better league for me. And I think we're probably, it's closer to our level, much closer to our level than the Premier League is. I don't know whether it's the worst thing if we did go up because we do need the money, but that's where we sort of need to give a manager time. Let us yo-yo for a couple of seasons, a bit like Norwich did with Daniel Farker, and a couple of other managers have done to sort of reap the longer term rewards.
Interesting. Well, we're just coming to an end. Couple of last comments. HJ says, people say if we get promoted, we won't be a good enough side. We've gone up twice. First time bought some excellent plays in the summer of 2015. Last time, awful players. What's to say we won't buy decent players again? Charlotte kind of adds to Shane's point of, do we really want promotion this season? I would settle for a near miss in a couple of good transfer windows. Interesting. Look, final thoughts, Sam, just looking ahead, Stoke away, which I've completely forgot about because everything's going on at the minute.
Mental.
I think the last thing to wrap it up on, Sam, is there's been talk of some banners. There's been talk of some peaceful protests, is the phrase that's being used. What are you going? Are you going on Sunday?
I am going on Sunday, yeah.
What is how are you feeling going into it, just as a fan? And number two, what would be your message to other fans going in terms of what to expect and what's going on?
In terms of the actual game, I'm not confident. I don't think I can be at the moment, particularly away from home against a tough Stoke team under a new manager as well. Playing against Ben Wilmot will be a difficult game. Look, I just urge fans, if you want to protest, I will be protesting myself with banners, just asking the Potsos to change their ways. I just urge you, if you are going to protest, keep it peaceful, keep it safe. Ultimately, we're all in this together as Watford fans. If you do want to protest, feel free to do so. If you don't, there's no need to have a go at people who do want to do so. We don't need violence. We don't need abuse towards players or anything like that. And just get behind the team during the 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's the best place to wrap it up on. Well said, Sam. Big shout out to all the other Watford fan sites, groups, bloggers doing some content. I think that's probably been the biggest positive out of the whole thing over the last couple of days. The likes of Voice of the Vic, From the Rookery End, the Watford Pod, Andrew French, Adam Leventhal, Do Not Scratch Your Eyes. Like, these guys are doing some really good stuff. So make sure you go and check it out on all the other social platforms and where you can find those guys. We'll be back for another video, I think probably after the Stoke game, right, Sam? Kind of talking about that one and how Slaven Bilic's first game in the Watford dugout gets on. Well, I say the dugout at Stoke away. Cold, windy, Sunday afternoon in Stoke. Can't wait. It's on Sky as well. As Odger says, please do give us a like if you enjoyed. Thanks to everyone who contributed tonight in the comment section. We really do appreciate it. And drop us a follow at WD18 Fans on socials. And we'll see you next time. Nice one. Up the Hornets. Cheers.